This is Muriro on Monday on Star FM. Muriro on Monday. Brace yourself. It's a hard hat area.
Star FM sounding good all the time. Thank you for making us your number one. Here's hoping you've had a pleasant Monday. I am Linda Muriro, and as always, on a day and time as this, we discuss issues to take Zimbabwe forward. Now, the Zimbabwe Agricultural Show opened its gates to the public today for the 114th edition. And it is coming at a time where various initiatives and programs are being undertaken because of the key role that agriculture plays. Now, agriculture plays a key role in the economic transformation mix of the country, and alongside mining, agriculture is positioned to anchor Zimbabwe's vision of becoming an upper middle income economy by 2030. Various agriculture mechanization programs have been implemented to boost the sector, and agriculture mechanization covers areas like land preparation, tillage, planting and sowing, fertilizers and chemical applications, irrigation, as well as post-harvesting processes. And tonight we discuss all things agriculture mechanization. And for this discussion, I'm joined in studio by agricultural engineering, mechanization and farm infrastructure development Chief Director in the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development, as well as Zimbabwe Farmers Union Operations Director, Dr. Prince Kuipa. Yes, those are my guests in studio, and I am going to be having this discussion with them. Yes, so I have the Chief Director from the Ministry of Agriculture, Chief Director Samuel Zimunga, as well as Dr. Prince Kuipa from the Zimbabwe Farmers Union. And you can come through and be part of this conversation via our studio lines 0772 or 0772 0714414413. And then just to begin with, I will start with you, Chief Director Zimunga. Can you tell us what is your role and your mandate in the ministry as your title says?
Okay, good evening, Linda. Good evening, our viewers. So, as the department that is in charge of agricultural engineering, mechanization, and farm infrastructure development, we are looking at mainly 5 portfolios there. The first one being the mechanization, which mainly speaks to agricultural machinery and equipment, which is power-driven or which is automated. The second element is to really look at how do we make Zimbabwe's agricultural industry from a post-harvest perspective, very versatile and adapted to the local conditions. Then the third element, which is the farm structures and infrastructure, is now mainly looking at those enabling infrastructure components as well as structures from an infrastructure level, whether it be small farm dams or be it farm buildings, be it farm roads, how these are integrated within the farming community to make sure that they bring economic value, because we all know that infrastructure is an enabler into any production system, and as such, it is also critical to have such within the agricultural space. Then the fourth element that we superintend over is looking at soil engineering and conservation. And I think whenever you talk of conservation, everybody starts to think of Fumvudza and why we are doing, conservation agriculture. That is also just part and parcel of soil engineering and what we envisage in terms of soil engineering. Then the last issue is to really look at the whole broad spectrum now, to look at anything and everything, agricultural equipment and technology, whether it's the issue of using drones in agriculture, the issue of using ICT gadgets in agriculture. These are all engineering fundamentals then that culminate under the Institute of Agriculture Engineering, looking at it from an economic perspective. So in brief, that is the portfolio and that is the scope of work that we are managing for and on behalf of Zimbabweans, the farming community, as well as trying to make sure that we come up with strategies and policies that, promote agricultural production and productivity in Zimbabwe.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief Director, for giving us that appreciation of what your role and mandate is. Can you define or give us a bird's eye view of Zimbabwe's mechanization thrust?
Okay. So, Linda, we are in a very exciting space as Zimbabwe currently, because ever since we struck off COVID in 2021, we have seen, a marked rise and marked improvement in terms of mechanization within the country. What we have done is to see a 93% increase in the adoption of mechanization equipment across that whole broad spectrum that you spoke about, be it in terms of the fertilizer application, be it in terms of planting, be it in terms of storage. Mm-hmm. So when we look at the investments that have gone into the space, for example, I'll use the tractor unit as a baseline in mechanization to say we only had about 7,900 tractors within the country, and currently we are looking at a scenario where we have already surpassed the 15,000 tractor mark, and all this has happened within a short space of time, which is only 3.5 years. And pretty much this shows you, the impetus that government has brought in terms of strategy and where we would want to take agriculture to. I can talk about, the modernization of grain storage as a country, where cabinet, directed in 2022 to say we now need to increase the national strategic grain reserve from, 500,000 metric tons to 1.5 million metric tons. And as such, we also then wanted to have a requisite infrastructure to take, that intake of grain that has come on board. We have been breaking records in terms of cereal grain production, be it in terms of wheat, be it in terms of maize. So that already also requires that there is a requisite infrastructure to also contain that harvest that we have taken up as a country. We have also seen the horticulture industry booming, and what it also means now is from a mechanization perspective, there is more and more of cold chain facilities that are coming on board, and that we continue to see for your export processing, so that at least the destinations that do get these products that come out of Zimbabwe are still fresh. Last but not least, I can also just give a good example to say, when you look at drone application in agriculture in Zimbabwe, agriculture has really been one of the forefront runners in terms of sectors to adopt drone technology. We have adopted drone technology for our surveying, our mapping, be it in busting quillia beds, all sorts of applications that you can ever think of. So ideally, I can simply say, there is a lot that is really happening within that space.
All right, and Dr. Kuyipa, to bring you in as the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, your reflections, or how do you perceive, view Zimbabwe's mechanization drive?
Thank you very much, Linda. I think the government is doing quite a lot in terms of making sure that farmers have access to mechanization in the form of mainly tractors and related equipment, as well as other infrastructure like harvesters and so on. That is very important, but you also appreciate that the demand is still surpassing supply in terms of the national requirements. The fast track land reform program brought in a cadre of black farmers who before were not really using tractors or needed much mechanization in terms of tractor driven equipment. Mm-hmm. Mostly we're using ox-drawn equipment, and now they've got bigger pieces of land which require efficiency in terms of timeliness, of operations, and that requires mechanization. We understand mechanization is having the potential to expand production, also to improve timeliness in terms of operations on the farm, and also compensating for labor shortages. You will realize that there is a situation of labor shortages in the farming areas, and mechanization is important to fill in that gap. And also, most importantly, it alleviates drudgery, which means there is no back-breaking operations on the farm if you are using mechanization. So the demand for tractors, for example, just giving figures here, they might not be up to date, but around 40,000 units of tractors. That's what we require. It's good that we are moving within 3 years. I hear that we are at 15,000. That's quite an achievement. What we really need as farmers is, like I said, timeliness is important. So these services that are being provided by government should come in, should be timely, so that farmers are able to prepare their land in time. If it is harvesting, then also it should be in time. If we are talking combine harvesters, for instance, that window is very limited. When if we are talking wheat farmers as an example, you need to do the planting up to a specific date, and then also you need to do the harvesting also up to a specific date. Otherwise, you will miss the window, and then your wheat can be rained on, and then it loses quality, and then the farmer will lose the value in terms of the returns. And then since this is a wheat that is being grown on credit, the bank will still be on the farmer's back, wanting their money, and yet the farmer had no control of all the factors that would have resulted in a good harvest. So I think those are some of the issues that come to mind as we talk about mechanization.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Kuipa. I see our phone lines are already buzzing as our listeners would want to be part of this discussion. Keep some messages coming through on 0772162651. I will be taking calls after the news at 7 o'clock. And Dr. Kuipa, they are saying that strides that have been made are welcome. 15,000 tractor units vis-a-vis demand or need of 40,000. That gap, Chief Director, in terms of funding mechanization, do we have the right funding models for our mechanization thrust?
Okay. No, thank you very much, Linda, for that. And indeed, I think right to point out that the national demand really is estimated for tractors, for example, at 40,000. So as government, we then sat down to bring in and crowd in the participation of private sector, because we do believe that agriculture should be, private sector led and then facilitated by government. So we have come up with what we call the Mechanization Development Alliance. And in this Mechanization Development Alliance, we are crowding in the participation of private sector to make sure that they bring the needed investment, onto the fora. So we have taken it from a three-tier perspective, where, first of all, from an international level, you will see that the commitment of government is to even go, international, to say, let's bring in partners from the global world that are, friendly to Zimbabwe, that can partake in the agricultural revolution within Zimbabwe. And we saw the coming on board of the John Deere facility. As we all know, John Deere is an American company, but they've actually invested $51 million in Zimbabwe at the start of 2020. We also saw, through the efforts of His Excellency, Comrade Dr. Idim Nangagwa, the Belarus facility coming on board. This one again was in two tranches. which was 15 million, and as well as another $52 million facility. And these have actually taken the market by storm. We have also seen locally, players like Bank ABC and Bain New Holland, partnering to also fund agricultural mechanization through what we call the Bain New Holland facility. But sufficing to say, you also realize that we are already sitting on another proposal, which is going to be launched very soon, by a local bank and a company called Lovol, which are also going to bring in equipment worth $65 million US. We have also then decided to say, look, the spectrum of the Zimbabwean farmer, we have got the smallholder farmer, that person who has got 1, 2, 3 hectares. We have the A1 farmer, 5, 6 to 20 hectares. We also have the A2 farmer, which is, your middle level farmer. Then we have got the hardcore commercial farmers. And we are saying that under the mantra, leave no one and no place behind. We have also brought in what we call the Fumvudza mechanization program. This one now, when you come on board, you will see that there's a lot of, play by local partners. I can give good examples to say, Zimplow being a local company has participated in that. We've got companies like Kurima, we've got companies like Gronet, and these ones are supporting what we then term the smallholder mechanization. And again, I'll bet when you look at all this is also private sector funding. So it's under this whole Mechanization Development Alliance framework where we are saying that if it's government outlaying the capital, then the equipment ought to be distributed on a recovery basis through a financial institution. If it's private sector capital, again, it goes through the same financial institution for recoveries. Because mechanization is a very capital intense, investment. There is no way you just walk into, a service provider or a manufacturer and buy a tractor as if you are buying a loaf of bread off the shelf. So we have had to then structure facilities over tenures of 3 to 5 years. And pretty much what this has done now is to say it then lessens the burden, especially on the farmer, to say if you are going to invest in equipment, then you don't really need to also then outlay your capital at once. But albeit, under the same framework again, we are saying it's not every farmer who needs to own a piece of equipment. Certain farmers will need to hire equipment. And now government has, through structures of government, like READER, your former DDF, also established AFC leasing company. So READER now offers what we call the social mechanization contract to the farming community. But AFC will come on board to do it at a commercial level. So you find that it's almost at every level of leaving no one and no place behind that we now have adopted a multiple, number of models under the mechanization.
Let's bring in the farmers and hear if they are happy with these models that have been put in place. Dr. Kuipa, are you happy as farmers with our financing of our mechanization drive? What more can be done differently or can be improved on?
Yes, like I said before, we appreciate the government's efforts in trying as much as possible to mechanize agriculture and to improve access to the mechanization through the various avenues that have been explained. That is government, and we also appreciate the private sector that is also involved in that space. And then also the hiring facilities from AFC, and also there is also another angle of supply, which is the farmer to farmer kind of arrangement where farmers who have acquired tractors and other equipment also offer the services to the other farmers who do not have. So the issue here is access, and I would like to underline that because the service can be available, but sometimes it might not be accessible to the farmers. So, for instance, especially the private sector, it would require the farmer to be productive. You would want to call it a chicken and egg thing. To be productive and to be able to then engage the private sector, because these are these are capitalists who would want profit and returns for investment. So the farmer must be able to get into that contract, pay for the tractor, and then own that tractor. So one of the big challenges with our farmers is access to finance. Why? Because the farmers, the financiers, they also are risk averse and would want collateral security from farmers, which they do not have. Most of the farmers, especially if we're talking the resettled farmers, there are issues still to be tackled by government in terms of security of tenure, where they can use their land to access financing, the 99-year lease or whatever form of title that the government will give them. But unfortunately, the banks are not accepting that form of collateral. I think there is work already also to be done to improve that.
All right. So we are going to continue with our discussion after the news at 7 o'clock, where I will also be taking some calls. Makaterera kunephenyero Star FM tokupai now indaba.
Now, Bazim Papers Radio Broadcasting Division.
Your mic is a noisy. Aminoti ngawi atarisi uyacherenga news. Aminoti chi. Yeah, ngatimboshifta tombona maybe. Because there's a sure sound, so it's, I think it's yeah, tombotra. I hope this one is clear, so maybe in the oil. Because Steve Angara mandit Simbara, so maybe. So just make sure it is.
Pagungano raitirwa panzvimbo high school kumazowe mudunhu renational and centrals iro rinokapitwa rikucherechedza population day.
Ayo wabvunza zvebasa rawo. Unoti vakuvaite naye ndo basa rawo ndozvaunogezera everyday vachiendera basa. A whole chief director, how can you ask a whole CD kuti tiri kubva kupisva naita nyaradzwa mwana
ukazeri paplatform ndogora pedza 4 hours.
Oh, ndosaka.
vakawanda vacho panguva yecovid. Gurukota rinoona nenyaya dzedhorobha reBulawayo nedevolution amaigirignuve vati hurumende yakazvipira kuumba manero akanaka ekuvamba kwemabhizimisi munyika muno zvichasimudzira upfumi hwenyika. Amai Nuve vakataura mashoko aya mumashoko avo avakaverengerwa nemunyori mukuru kumahofisi avo waPolomoni. Izvo vaizarura musangano wemazuva maviri wechikamu cheZimbabwe Investment Development Agency uyo wanga kupitirwa muguta reBulawayo. Mukuru wechikamu chinoona nezvekununura vanenge vawirwa nenjodzi Dr. Nathan Gomo vakurudzira madzishe pamwe nevakuru vezvisvondo kuti vave ndivo vanotungamira urongwa hwekurwisana nezvinodhaka. Muhurukuro yavaita nevatapina weZim Papers Radio News, Dr. Ngomo vatsinira kukosha kwekutungamidza madzishe nevezvisvondo muurongwa ohwo sezvo varivo vanokwanisa kusvika kunzvimbo dzese dzese zvikuru sei idzo dzakasarira. Zvichakadaro hurumende iri kusimbaradza matanho ayo ekurwisana nekushandiswa kwezvinodhaka kubudikidza nekushandirana pamwe chete nemapoka akatsaukana munyika. Idzi dzange dziri nhau iko zvino vengaenda ramai vakateerera.
Indaba kuZim Papers Radio Broadcasting Division.
Asingamashona amahle mshakazi indaba zakusihlwa lizethulelwa nguSibenkosobe. Umongameli uMnumzana Emmerson Mnangagwa uthi uhulumende uhlela ukuphuma lesinqumo esihlose ukuqeda udubo lokumitha kwabantwana abancane. Sikhuluma nje ingatsha ezibalisa olempilakahle lokondla kuhle kwabantwana kanye lokuphathelane lenhlalakahle kaZulu ziphakathi kokuphuma lamanyathelo ajonge ukuthuthukisa lokulondoloza amalungelo amantombazana. uMnumzana Mnangagwa ukhulume amazwi la kumbiko wakhe awubalele ngomkanentambo wezempilakahle lokondla kwabantwana uDkt. Douglas Mabeshora emkhosini obekhona esikole seNdimbo High School esiseMashonaland Central ophuze ukwenziwa ukuthakazelela usuku olwe-World Population Day oluhlanganyela uhlelo oluhlose ukuqeda udubo lokumitha kwabantwana. Ngokusenjalo ummeli we-United Nations Population Fund kuleli iMiranda before ukuthi inhlanganiso yakhe izimisele ukubona uhlelo lolu luphumelela ubuye
increase the number of functional irrigation schemes from 330 to 460. Where are we with those plans?
Okay. So in terms of irrigation development, Linda, I think we are really, on an upward trajectory. And what's happening in that particular space is recently you saw His Excellency, the President of the country, launching the Irrigation Development Conference. In that particular conference, again, just like we have the Mechanization Development Alliance, we also have a specific, investment model which we call the Irrigation Development Alliance. And within that Irrigation Development Alliance, we are also crowding in the participation of private sector. And what we are doing now is to say, look, if we are to climate-proof agriculture in Zimbabwe, the way to go is irrigation development. And indeed, you realize that the number of inquiries and the number of projects that are actually being implemented is actually set to make sure that we achieve that particular target by 2025.
All right, so how many functional irrigation schemes do we have? Have they increased from 330? Where are we as far as increasing that number to 460?
Okay, so indeed, we are currently looking at a figure of 382, and we have quite a number of partners that have come on board. We have, partners in GCF and UNDP, which are doing rehabilitation as well as new constructions. We have just completed the smallholder irrigation revitalization program, which also brought on board something close to about 52 irrigation schemes. And we have currently what we call the SACAP project, which is also doing a lot in terms of irrigation development. So like I said, that the investment model is crowding in the participation of both private and public sector. You will then find that there are a number of other players, individuals, for example, conglomerates that are also coming on board. And indeed, that number that I spoke of, we are set to surpass that number as we come to the end of the year.
All right, and on deep tanks, what is the plan to rehabilitate defunct deep tanks and distribution of chemicals? Does government have adequate resources?
Okay, so the question is to say, does government have adequate resources? Indeed, for any nation to prosper, animal production is one key element that we are looking at in terms of revitalizing the agricultural space. And from a mechanization level, you have got two types of infrastructure in terms of dipping of cattle. You are looking at your concrete and mortar deep tanks, but you are also looking at a new novel development, which is what we call the spray race technology. So the spray race technology is just as efficient and it's got the same efficacy as that which you do get through plunge dipping. So as a drought mitigation measure, the country has also realized that diseases tend to increase during such lean seasons like this one. So we have had to go on a massive drive to install spray race technology. One, it's cheaper. Two, it's more economic in terms of operation of those. And in terms of really the resource to say the chemicals that are used in dipping, indeed government has done a lot, and we are saying that it is adequate for now, and we are also calling on our partners to say, look, like I said before, farming is not a government initiative. It must be private sector led and government facilitated.
All right, and bringing you, Dr. Kuipa, this issue of a private sector led, I have had guests coming in, including some agroeconomists and general economists, talking about government's funding model of agriculture. As the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, how do you, what proposals have you made to government, including the issue of the high cost in purchasing agriculture that you talked about, the different financing models that you say may be beyond the reach of many farmers? What proposals have you made that you think could put Zimbabwe in a better trajectory?
Okay, I had sort of touched on one of those when I was talking about access to finance and how farmers are failing to access financing, because first and foremost, the farmer is the main investor. It's the main private sector player. So we need to empower the farmer first by making sure that they've got access to financing. The spray race that has been referred to, most of the time you find these on private farms, and that's part of the infrastructure that also relate to the tractors that we were discussing earlier on, that require that is capital intensive. You really need some money to put that in place. So I think the proposal that we have put to government is to ensure that I think we have actually put a position paper on security of tenure to government for their consideration, to expedite the discussions that are taking place between the government and bankers, so that the bankers accept the form of land holding paperwork that the farmers are holding, so that they have access to finance. And if they have access to finance, they can participate in capital accumulation and building up infrastructure on the farms.
All right, and as farmers or Zimbabwe Farmers Union, how have you suggested that a balance be achieved between the need for the banks to have security and the farmers' need for security of tenure? How have you proposed that balance be achieved, Dr. Peter?
Sorry. Can you pass that on?
All right, so you have said that you have presented a paper where you have called on government and banks to expedite issues around the security of tenure, so that farmers can access credit lines that are affordable. How do you recommend that balance be achieved between the need for banks to have that security that is guaranteed and certain, and that security of tenure for the farmers as well? How can that balance be achieved?
Yeah, I think it is like has already been alluded to, that government should facilitate business. So here we are talking policy. And I think if the policy is addressed as we suggested, because when we do this, we also say we have a problem, but we can propose that we can solve it this way.
So it's the policies that we want to hear. What policy interventions do you think that government needs to put in place?
Okay, so the main one that I've already alluded to is the policy on land tenure. That if that is put in place, farmers are empowered so that they can walk into a bank with their ownership papers, and the bank is accepting those papers, then they can access credit lines. But also that since we are talking development here, the government can also come in with other credit lines, like that what is happening already under the other financing mechanisms that are in place, like NIAPS. The government is actually playing a role by guaranteeing the credit lines, so that farmers can access the financing that is already happening. I think this can also take place in terms of medium to long-term financing, because that's what we are talking about here in terms of infrastructure. So if you look at the policy right now, it's okay that farmers are getting financing, but you see that it's short-term, most of it. The one that is called NIAPS, and then you get that financing for the season, and then you grow, for instance, your wheat, and then you harvest, and then you must pay back. But we are talking of investment that is going for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, with the farmer paying back, and that can only come when the policy has been adjusted like so.
All right, it is 18 minutes after 7 o'clock. I will now be taking calls on 0772-162-651. We are talking all things mechanization, and I'm joined in studio by Engineer Edwin Zimunga, Chief Director, Agricultural Engineering, Mechanization and Farm Infrastructure Development in the Ministry of Lands, as well as Dr. Prince Kuipa, who is Operations Director with the Zimbabwe Farmers Union. Do come through with your views on 0772-162-651, and some of the messages that are coming through on our WhatsApp platform. Hi Linda, why do we not take advantage of the drought and poor rains so that we rehabilitate irrigation dams and reservoirs that have succumbed to siltation? Each year we are always told that dams have run dry, etc. We should at least be proactive as a country to ensure the little rains that we get count for something. All right, thank you. This listener's number ends with 772. And another question is, my question is, if banks take leases, how do they execute in case of a default. All right, and some of the messages that are coming through. Let me take some calls. Star FM, good evening. Star FM, hello. Star FM, good evening. All right, 0772162651. Do remember to lower the volume of your radio as soon as you're through. Azvigoni kuti mugotaura nesu mugosvinzwa zvekare pa wireless yenyu. Pano pane imwe nhare. Star FM, good evening. Yes, you are through to Star FM.
Got one question for CD and one question for doctor.
Go ahead.
Yes, what area for